Hello, I am Moodita, and welcome back to Satisfactory Update 1.2. In this save, I'm using a few of the new game modes that have just been added. I need 100 times the space elevator parts to complete each phase. Each machine takes 5 times the normal power, and the resource nodes are random, and so is their purity. In the last video, I unlocked the majority of the new milestones now that I'm in phase 3. I now have a jetpack with packaged liquid biofuel, which is a huge quality of life improvement with all of these towers. Thanks to all the hard drives I collected, it was just a matter of time until I got the heavy old residue and diluted packaged fuel recipes. I headed out to the rocky desert to use 2 normal and 1 pure oil node. I converted all of it to 40,000 megawatts of power. With the 2 alien power augmenters, that's actually an extra 48,000. Unfortunately, it's still not the best power source, and I need to spend about 50% of it to generate all that. But that's more than enough to finally build my first permanent factory. Today, we're getting started in the Blue Crater. The main project for today is going to be a permanent plastic and rubber factory. We take a look at the space elevator requirements to get out of this phase. I need a lot of versatile framework. And it's been slowly working away, but I'm only making 36 per minute. And you could do the math, it's going to take a very long time if I leave it at 36 per minute. If we take a look at the spreadsheet for this factory, on the very right hand side, I have the list for all of the power. Now, it's not completely correct, and obviously since I've done all of this underclocking, it's really not correct. But if you were going to leave the machines at 100%, it's going to be pretty close. These last 2 towers are the ones making the versatile framework. At 100%, they would use 540 megawatts. Now, if I select the whole factory at 100%, it would be using over 3,600 megawatts. So thankfully, this very last step isn't the bulk of the power. It's actually only a small fraction. Normally in this type of situation, I would just find another location and I would just build more. But for this, I think I actually have a better option. I think most of you probably have an idea of where I'm going to go with this, but just in case you don't, I'm going to cut off production to this very last set of towers. This way, all of the rest of the towers will continue to produce, nothing's going to back up. I'm not pausing production for anything. Except for the final step. They're going to slowly start to run out of parts. And I could wait for it to all finish, but to be honest, I'm just impatient and I want to boost this production. So we are going to delete everything for these last 2 steps. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, these things are so tall, I should probably start at the top and work my way down. And now I'm just going to work my way down. Thankfully, the bulk of it is a blueprint, and that makes it a lot easier. And then I just have to be really careful and not accidentally delete something randomly behind this. That is really my biggest fear in doing something like this. Man, having the jetpack is a huge improvement doing stuff like this. Alright, let me finish cleaning up these towers and I'll show you the next step. 2 towers gone. I know this is a pretty good amount of space, but never ceases to amaze me just how many things I can fit in a tower. Alright, so now let's talk about how I'm going to replace those. If we take a look at the spreadsheet, at 100% clock speed, I would need 7.2 machines. And that's why I had 72. Placing 10 times as many meant that I got to bring down the power consumption by a lot. And I remembered to take a look before I deleted them all. Each assembler was using 3.6 megawatts. I just want to see what the difference is, because I'm going to replace those 72 assemblers with 3. Using power shards are going to mean that they're going to use a good amount more power, but it makes it way more efficient and feasible to use the summer sloops. That temporary 3 assembler blueprint that I made for the last video, I'm just going to use it again. Let's get this right in the middle. That should line up with this merger. So now when I place this here, I obviously don't need the industrial storage containers. And I've already got the right recipe, since that was the last thing I used this for. But now I need to put some shards in here. Normally I would do the long math, and you definitely can, but thankfully even I can do this one. I'm going to be making 36 of these across the 3 machines, so that's just going to be 12 apiece. With them clocked to 240% and the summer sloops, these are going to use a decent amount of power, but I'm going to take my production from 36 to 72. For the amount of effort I have to put in, this is definitely really nice. While this is ramping up, let's take a look at the power. 954.4. Oof. Alright, so 954.4 times 3. That's what we're using now. 2,863. Let's see what the difference is. With the 2 towers, each of those assemblers was using 3.6 megawatts, and there was 72 of them. Going the underclocking route, much more efficient, but I have doubled my production for only 2,600. Just pure power wise, yeah, underclocking everything, building a whole nother setup would probably be slightly more efficient. But then you do also need more miners, and those are generally overclocked and use quite a bit of power. And part of the reason I can do this with the versatile framework is because the machines each output so much. I need more than double the amount of assemblers for my smart plating setup, and I'm making even less of them. Because machines for smart plating only put out 2 per minute, whereas versatile framework is 5. So out of the 3 from the last phase, this is the one that I wanted to overclock and sloop. It's a good thing I have those industrial storage containers. These are slightly piling up, so now I need to upgrade this belt all the way. I do have quite a few of the factory carts on this route, but now that I've just doubled production, I should probably add a couple more. It's a good thing they're super cheap to build, but man, I do wish they stacked. Just throw you down there. Versatile framework pickup, space elevator, enable autopilot. Probably add, I don't know, 4 or 5 more. The only difference it really makes is how often the truck stations turn on, because on standby they use, I think, probably like 0.1 megawatts. Then they'll shoot up to 100 during this animation. Well, before this I was right around 40,000, so yeah, we've definitely increased the power consumption here. But now this is in not too horrible of a time. So I've got about 232,000 left to go, give or take a couple. Now that we're doing 72 a minute, divided by 60 minutes an hour. So yeah, it's still going to take quite a while. I've still got almost 54 hours until this one is done. But that's a pretty good start considering I still have a lot to do. That next project is plastic and rubber. And I keep forgetting, it didn't take long at all. Satisfactory modding community is amazing, and I've got my SkyUI back. So don't get me wrong, I do like a good night shot of the factory every once in a while, but I think it'll be a whole lot easier to follow if I can just make it daytime. This little setup has been great to get all of my unlocks done and build up just a nice little stockpile for me to be able to use. Plastic and rubber are really the first parts where I feel it's a good idea just to maximize a node. For most parts in the game, I really prefer to just make what I need for that specific factory. Especially for the very basic parts, you know, for iron plates. I'm not going to make a giant iron plate factory and then ship them all over. Iron is all over the place. It's just much easier to make iron plates for that one factory on location. And that's how I feel for most parts. There are a handful that I feel the opposite way, and plastic and rubber are one of those. Later on, when we get to aluminum, that's the other one. I prefer to just maximize the node, so I'm going to make way more plastic and rubber than I need right now. The downside is, these machines are expensive, so as far as power goes, this may not be the smartest choice. But I think the last video showed that if I need more power, I'll just go make more power. I think at this point, that's the easier solution. I've never had a permanent plastic and rubber factory in the Grassy Fields, so I think that's what we're going to do today. I want to use this node right here, and I think there's enough water in that little lake right there, right? I would prefer to keep the pipes as short as possible, so somewhere in this location, we're going to put the main factory. I probably should chainsaw these and save the wood and turn it into more liquid biofuel just in case, but just blowing everything up is just so much more fun. Oh, doggo, you got to get out of here, buddy. Hopefully these will scare him away. Let me blow up a few more trees and place some foundations, and then we'll go over the plan. First, we're taking a little side trip over to my creative save. Just a little bit easier if I can fly around to show you everything. This is where things can get a little bit more complicated, so I thought it would be best to break everything down instead of just saying, here's the new blueprint, and just expecting it to all make sense. For our example here, the industrial fluid buffer is just going to act as the fuel source. Just pretend that's the oil extractor. The benefit to the default recipe for either the plastic or the rubber is they're just simple. It's plug in the crude oil and you get your plastic and then a byproduct of heavy oil residue. And if you don't need that much plastic or rubber and you have other uses for the heavy oil residue, I'm sure there's instances where this would make sense. But if you need plastic and or rubber in a good quantity, it's not really the most efficient way to do it. You're going to use a lot of crude oil. Instead, we're still going to start with a refinery, but the very first one is going to be making the heavy oil residue. That is going to feed into another refinery, which will turn it into the diluted packaged fuel. Now we can't forget there are some other things, so just to make sure we have all parts accounted for, we're going to put a sink here, because I need to get rid of that polymer resin. Over here, I need a packager, because I need packaged water. We'll just pretend that one's water. Okay, so now we have our packager. Thankfully, I know that I can make a closed loop with the canister, so I don't have to worry about that part yet. Now, out of here, I've got a bunch of packaged fuel. To do anything with it, I'm going to need another packager. This one will unpackage that fuel, which gives me the empty canisters I need to plug right back in there. So we've got a nice little closed loop. And now I've got fuel. And now here comes the magic. What I need is 2 refineries. One will make plastic, the other one the rubber. These ones are going to be using the recycled plastic and rubber versions. The way the recipes work are exactly the same, you just flip-flop the 2 parts. To make 12 rubber, I need 6 plastic and 6 fuel. So to make the 12 plastic, I just need 6 rubber and then the same 6 fuel. If you're looking to make only plastic or only rubber, then you're going to want to do this differently, but everything leading up to it is going to be the same because you're going to need fuel. But what I'm going to show you is how to make an equal amount of both plastic and rubber. What you're going to do is on the output of each of these, and then it'll just feed into the opposite one. So this one is then going to feed into the rubber, and then the rubber is going to come around and feed into the plastic. So when this makes 12 plastic, 6 of it are going to go to my storage or to another factory, or a lot of the time a sink probably. The other 6 is going to come over here to make rubber. Once it gets the 6 plastic, then it can make 12 rubber, and then same thing happens. 6 of it gets split off and feeds this. And this gives you a nice little infinite loop of just plastic and rubber. I just need to keep supplying it with fuel. Now, originally I said this was going to go in a sink because that would just keep everything flowing, and that's how I normally do it. But since I'm making plastic and rubber, what I really want to do is take that polymer resin and send it into another refinery. Now I have the option of the residual plastic or the residual rubber. If you look at the numbers, this one is 6 polymer resin and 2 water, whereas this one is 4 resin and 4 water. For the very first factory, since I don't really know if I need more plastic or rubber, I'm just going to go with rubber because you end up making more. I can make 100 rubber versus the, I think, 66 2/3 plastic. I just need to also supply this with some water. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. That's all the parts we need to make a good sized plastic and rubber factory. Alright, so now to go through the blueprint, because obviously I want to clean it up and not have it laid out quite like this. If you saw the last video, this blueprint probably looks very familiar, because that is how we're going to start. I spent way too long trying to cram just as much of this as possible into one blueprint, and just wasn't really worth it. So instead, I ended up modifying this one. As you'll notice, I only have one packager here, but we'll get to that in a second. The main kind of bus that goes around within the factory is going to have three things. The bottom one is crude oil. The next one will be the water. The very top will be collecting all of the polymer resin. Before we go through all of the numbers, I think it'll be best to show you the second part. And here's the second blueprint. So what I've basically done is split this up, so just kind of ignore the residual rubber. We're just going to deal with that separately because that actually needs very few refineries. So it'll be easier just to group up all the polymer resin and then resplit it up. Everything else, I want to make their own kind of mini system here. So I've split it off so these two refineries and the packaged water are in the first blueprint. And then the second packager and then the plastic and rubber refineries are in the second blueprint. So the way this works is the packaged fuel is going to come up from down below. So this blueprint is going to be set right on top of the other one. The packager will then unpackage the fuel, and then that will go down into this pipe. Using the new T-junction, it'll get split in half. So half of it will go to this refinery. The other half will come around and plug into this one. And then the empty canisters will get sent down below and continue the loop. The outputs for both refineries are set up the same way. So on this side, it's the rubber, goes into a splitter. Then that gets split in half. Half of it feeds the residual plastic refinery. The other half will then go into a merger. And then when I copy and paste these next to each other, I can use the good old Blueprint Auto Connect. And then that way all of the rubber will get grouped together on one side. And if we come to the other side, we have a mirrored setup in blue for the plastic. This splitter feels kind of supported since the lifts are plugging into it on either side. So with this one, I kind of wanted to have the mergers be the main support. Instead of using a bunch of these to support the belts and then just have the mergers floating, I thought I would just use some beam supports and the new cross beams to support the actual merger instead. It's simple, but I like it. I've made real similar blueprints to these in other saves, but for whatever reason, I think this one is my favorite. It all comes together really well. So I haven't gone through any of the numbers, and that's because I wanted to reference the spreadsheet again. So if we look at the amount of machines that I need, some of them need very few, like the residual rubber. Like I said, that one's just going to be its own process. But the rest of the refineries are all pretty similar. I need either 10 for the heavy oil residue or 13 1/3, which is obviously a super convenient number. But even if we round up, 14 is not great, 15 isn't either. 16, however, I can work with 16. So all of the numbers are based off of having 16 of those machines. So for both the plastic and the rubber, that means that they're each going to output 50 and require 25 fuel. That means this packager needs to be unpackaging 50 fuel because it's feeding the two refineries. Knowing those numbers, now I can come over here. That means this refinery needs to be clocked for 50 fuel. This one needs to be unpackaging 50 water. And because this loop is a lot longer for my canisters, I'm going to go ahead and place a full stack of 100. It's probably a few too many, maybe you only need 60 or 80, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. You can have too many, but this isn't that. And then the very last one is clocked to 25. Okay, I hope that all made sense. Let's go put it together. Back to the real save. I've got some foundations placed, but before we go over there, I realized I've already chewed through almost all of my empty canisters already, so I needed to set up another temporary one. This will be working away in the background since each of the blueprints needs 100 of the canisters. It seemed like a good idea to just overclock and sloop this thing so I can crank out as many as I need. And at 300 per minute, I think that'll do. Alright, let's build a factory. I've surrounded the lake here with foundations, but I think I've left just enough space for all the water extractors I'll need. We'll probably build those last. This right here is the middle of the lake, and that's what I would like to make the middle of this. So if this right here is the center, I think if I bring everything to the half of the foundation on this side, and then we do the half foundation, the 8-meter gap in the middle, I think will be enough. And on this side, I think I just need one foundation. I do need quite a few of these, so I'm trying not to space it out too much. But let's go ahead and start here. And put it in Blueprint Auto Connect. Looks good. And that's actually one too many. I only need 8 on each side. Alright, so that's one side in. Let's go ahead and work on the other one. Now I just need to flip it around so the packager is on this side. 8 more to go. And that's all the machines I need for the diluted package fuel step. Apparently, I can't count. Now there's 8 blueprints on each side. Definitely gonna have to add a little bit more, but that's okay. I just wanted to get enough space for all of this, and now I can combine basically the two halves. I'll have the belt connect on that side. On this side, I'm just gonna cut that one off. So we're just going to cut all of these off real quick. The crude oil is going to make a giant loop. For the diluted package fuel, in total I need 800 water. So even though I guess I could plug in the two 400s from either side, and that should work, kind of like the coal generators early on in the game, I don't really want to do that though. So instead I'm going to have 2 pipes of the 400 and then have them just be completely separate. But I am going to loop them. So I'm going to have this water pipe just run straight back this way. And now here at the front, I want to make a loop of the oil again. Except for this is where everything's going to get plugged in. And the oil pipe will come from somewhere over here. The water... yeah, actually, I think I want to have it just look like that on both sides. See, I should be able to do the same thing on this side. Have it point this way. Oh, well, maybe I'll have to straighten that out a little bit. I guess maybe these pipes need a little bit more space. I can't run them that close. Alright, let me tidy this up real quick, and then we'll move on to the next floor. Alright, so I got things spaced out the right way, a little bit more symmetrical, and I like the way that it came out. The polymer resin is just going to go on a giant loop, and then we're going to deal with it once it gets out to that side. So that is half the machines. Now let's place the second half. And now I just got to make sure that it is facing the right direction. I think this is the right way. I wanted to include the floor because I wanted to include the floor holes. So I think, yeah, that one lines up with the input more or less. We'll just double check once I place it. And sorry about the confusing name. This is plastic and rubber, and this is the third version. Finally came up with one that I like. If you guys want these blueprints, just let me know and I'll name it something better and put it on the Google Drive. There's the first one. So now let's double check, make sure that everything is lined up. And since I'm dealing with 50 canisters per minute, I can use all Mark 1 belts. And, whoops, looks like I'm off by, I'm gonna guess 4 meters. Yeah, it's right on that line. This is right on the center line. All right then. which makes sense because I gave myself an 8-meter gap in between the two blueprints. So yeah, this probably needs to be over by 4 meters. Okay, so now with it being offset by the 4 meters, now this should be in the right spot. And let's go back down here and test it out. And this one is just going to have a belt going over. Nice and snug, no clipping, just what we like to see. And that right there completes the canister loop. The package fuel will come up here, go into the packager, get unpackaged, empty canisters go back down, and into this packager. Packages the water, back into the refinery, and it goes on and on forever. And in case you're wondering, I wanted to give all of this a good amount of space. So I just zooped up 10 foundations. And so the next floor is even with the 10th one. So it has a gap of 9. And that gives a good amount of clearance for the smokestacks. Now that I've got one in the right spot, good old blueprint auto connect. And for this, we're actually going to have to fly. It's going to make it a lot easier. When you end up in the middle of a whole bunch of blueprints, sometimes it can be a little bit trickier. Can I make it? Yes. Liquid biofuel is amazing. Alright, now the same thing, we just do this side with it flipped 180. Which should mean that this one is also blue. The plastic is just going to run on the inside, and then all of the rubber is going to be on the outside. Looks good. I'm really not sure why sometimes the auto connect just doesn't connect. It just lets me place the blueprint. Doesn't happen that often, but it definitely happens. Like that time. I'm pretty sure I only clicked it once. I don't actually know if it's connected or not. Better safe than sorry. And there's the other half of the machines. Well, I guess I need a few more machines. But it's only a couple refineries and just a handful of water extractors. See, for this, we can go ahead and just clip off this very last one. I don't really need this merger, but because it's got the support and everything, I also just kind of like the way that it looks. So we're going to keep the very last one. And then once we get to this side, we'll just chop these off. And then we can replace it. And yeah, we can bring this last one in just a little bit. Have it run right along the edge. And now all of the plastic will flow this way and then head out that way. And then same thing with the rubber. It will start on this side, head all the way around, and I'll end up with 400 plastic and 400 rubber coming out of those end mergers. And now I have a few lifts to place, so I don't really know which one's easiest. I think actually just going around, I think we'll do all of the ones just connect straight away. A little bit easier this way since I don't have to rotate it. And now we do all the ones for the water extractor. Next up, water extractors. Since I want these to be back to back, I'm going to line everything up with the back side. 1 1/4 foundation should be the very center. And if I hold control, I can get it to snap. And yep, nice and snug with the side here. And this was just to get it placed. Now we can delete all that. Well, let's change up the colors. What if we did the other way around? Yeah, I like that. So the lake isn't the biggest, which means that I won't be doing my underclocking. I'm only going to be able to fit 5 water extractors here in total. I need 800 water just for the diluted package fuel step, and then I'll need an extra 200 water to turn all the polymer resin into rubber. In total, I need 1,000, and if I can fit 5 of them in here, that means we're gonna get 200 out of each one of these. Which means these are gonna use a bit more than 100 megawatts apiece, but I'm okay with it. Now I'm just going to join up these two and then those two. And then that very last one is just going to have a really long pipe that goes to the very end of the factory. But these ones I'm just going to have come up to here. And they'll plug into this. Now I have 400 in this pipe. And we just need good old horizontal to vertical. Stand right there. Terrific. And there's 400 water, which will feed 1/2. And then we'll do the same thing for these two. Those will feed this half. And then, like I said, this last one will just get its own pipe. And I think I'm just going to have to add some more foundations. And that will just run all the way back there. And here we've got the water pipe. And I went ahead and powered on the water extractors early just so I could fill the pipes up. And I added a few more foundations to the very end here. So now we can take care of the very last part. For this, I made another just really simple blueprint. It's just 3 refineries. It's load balanced, but like it says in the name for the blueprint, it's not inline. Like most of these are more or less built to be manifolded for the pipes, but this one is not. Because I thought it would be nice just to have a really simple blueprint. So at 100%, I could place exactly 5. But I don't really feel like load balancing 5. So I'm just going to place 6, do a little bit of underclocking, and save a megawatt or 2. Fortunately, I didn't place enough foundations, so now I need even more. Everything in this game is so huge. There's really no advantage to load balancing pipes as far as I know, because with sloshing I don't think you really can, but since that's the way these blueprints are set up, that's just how I'm going to do it here. And this one only has 200 water in there, so I just left it as a Mark 1 pipe. Now I just need to do the same thing with the splitters. Alright, so I'm assuming this is a bug, but let me know if you run into it or if you didn't know what was going on. This is probably it. I find it really annoying depending on which factories I'm in, so I'm crossing my fingers at some point this gets fixed. So if I lock a splitter or a merger in place, I can now use my arrow keys and nudge it around. I can go up and down and all that. So over here, these short lifts are fine because they're just too small to be able to fit one on. But if there are any long ones, like all of these ones over here, if I were to accidentally look at it, all of a sudden my splitter jumps over here, even though I have it locked in place until I look at one of these. So if you're ever in a factory and you're nudging it around, and when you're looking around, you just accidentally move your cursor over one of your lifts and then it goes away, that would be why. But if I look at the ground, we're good. Okay, so I think that is in the right spot. I'm going to have 200 polymer resin, so that'll be 100 on each of these. There we go, good old straight mode. Okay, so now the polymer resin from right over here is just going to make its way around and into there. And that's how I squeeze that last 100 rubber out of the factory. 400 from up here, 100 from all the resin, and then the 400 plastic. Oh yeah, and the Manta Raise mod has been updated. Now he can't fly straight through every single one of my towers. So as far as getting the factory up and running, there's not much left to do. I need to clean up this initial setup. I'm going to be using that normal oil node for this factory, so I need to delete all of that and get a pipe going from there to there. And then it's decoration and run the power line over here. And maybe add a few storage containers to give it some place to go. I'm so happy that I'm finally at this point of the game, because I feel like now I can start building permanent factories. I'm going to need plastic and rubber at a good amount, and there isn't really a way to improve on this whole setup, except for eliminating all the packagers, but that's not a big enough advantage to want to delete all of this and replace it. So I plan on keeping this for the rest of the save, which means I would like to spend just a little bit more time on the decorating. The save is currently at 116 hours and 52 minutes. So let's see how long it takes me to add a couple walls and signs. Welcome back to my new plastic and rubber factory. The save is now at 122 hours and 7 minutes. Like with most of my tours, we're going to start with the farthest part and work our way back to the factory. And now that starter plastic and rubber factory are all gone. See, I told you it was just temporary. I just have a few containers of plastic, rubber, and canisters that I'll eventually move. The oil is now being piped over. With the elevation change, I might have been able to get away with just a Mark I pipe, but an extra 20 megawatts with a project this big, it's fine. There are some things that I just want to work, and if they cost just a tiny bit more, I'm okay with it. Starting with the design for the outside here, I made a couple of these blueprints just to make things easier. And obviously, if you look at it now, I could have included more. I could have included one row of windows on either side, and it would have made the whole thing easier. The problem with that is I just didn't know which windows I was going to pick at the time. And with a lot of my decorating, I have an idea for one piece, and so I'll build that, place it in, and then I work on what's going to go well with it next. So a lot of the time it ends up being a whole bunch of smaller blueprints that I just kind of individually place. And then when you look at it as a whole afterwards, you realize I could have made the blueprint even more involved and saved myself a little bit of time, but that's just rarely how it works for me. This is something that I really like in this factory, and I really want to try to use more, and that's just the patterns, just to add, a little splash of color. So I have those on both levels, and then just a few signs here or there to add some accent lights. I didn't want to add too many windows, so this whole section is just pillars, but then I outlined it with some more signs. And here we have the roof. So there were two things that I really wanted, and it took me forever to figure out how to do it and not make it look too bad. I wanted some of the light to get through, so I wanted to use some of the either glass roofs or glass floors. And then because there's so many refineries in there, I wanted some more fans. So I'm sure you can guess. This is a blueprint. So very simple. It's even more or less hollow on the inside so that when you're inside, and I'll show you, you can actually see all of the vents kind of sucking the air out. Or at least that's the idea. And here's the main entrance. As you can see, I've got my priority power switch and a light control panel. So when this factory gets turned on, the very front here will be lit up at least. So we can come in here, and now we can see it's not exactly a cheap factory to run, but this is going to give me a good amount of rubber and plastic. I've got my 5 water extractors here. So from the entrance, you can either stay at the ground level and go around the edges here, and you'll stay on this first floor, or you can take the stairs, and that will take you up to the second floor. So on the first floor, I decided to just have the catwalk just run straight down the middle. And you'll probably notice if we look up, that gap in between the blueprints, that's what I decided to do with it. To make things easy, I just made this a whole blueprint. And that way I only have to place a couple of them. It's essentially just a bunch of glass floor foundations on the top and the bottom, and then right in the very center is a metal beam. I actually used the cross beam, just because they fit so well with the signs. And I'm sure most of you know already, but one of the just fantastic things about 1.2 and help make building this is I can now switch signs to zoop. So I can zoop up to 10, same as everything else, but we can now zoop them in either direction, and oh, that is just so nice. The amount of time and effort you save, it's amazing. I love that change so much. But then making a blueprint so that I could place, 40 signs at once is even better. And then once we come to the other end, the catwalks go to either side, and then you can get down to the floor. I've got 3 industrial storage containers for both plastic and rubber. I just need to delete some of those other dimensional depots, and then I can place them on here. I'm making 500 rubber per minute total in here, 400 from the recycled recipe, 100 from the residual rubber recipe. That's too much to fit on my 480 belts. And so the 100 has its own smart splitter, and since the good old industrial storage containers have 2 inputs, this works out great for me. And then again, I can't put all 500 on there, so not all of the rubber goes to one sink. The top belt will be the 100 rubber. When all of the rubber fills up, this bottom one is going to have 400, which only leaves 80 left on that belt. So the 100 line is going to come over to here, drop down into a splitter, and then that way 50 will go to here. So we'll have 450 rubber. This side will have the 50 rubber and then the 400 plastic when that fills up. And that solves my belt limitations. Up on the second floor, I decided I didn't want the walkway to run right down the middle, just because I've got all that light and glass. It lets a little bit of light down through here, so I thought if I added a walkway over it, then it might start to cover more of it. So now the walkways are only on the outside for the second floor. Even though I've enclosed all these refineries, I think having all those fans at the top help. It's always nice to have more than one entrance to the factory, and so I have an opening on this side as well. And thankfully, the factory didn't end up overhanging by too much. But it definitely does stick out enough that I didn't want to just run the foundations straight down. So I used a bunch of the inverted ramps and then just made it flat at a certain point so that I didn't have to take it all the way to the ground and kind of make it look weird. It may have taken a few hours, probably a little bit longer than I meant to spend on it, but I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. And for it being the first permanent factory of the save, I think I can be pretty proud of this. Well, I will be if it works. When I mentioned I made a whole bunch of just random mini blueprints to make stuff like this, these are some of them. Sometimes I want just a support for my walkway, because that was going to be really long unsupported all the way down. And yeah, I really like the crossbeams. I realized that you can zigzag the power lines with the water extractors, and then you don't have to clip them just directly through each other. It is a little chaotic with the wiring, but man, the daisy chaining is just so convenient. So I'm sitting at around 42,000 megawatts right now. Let's flip the switch. And now all of the refineries have backed up. Perfect. I had pre-filled all of the water and oil pipes, but as soon as these machines all turn on, they instantly suck up 50 of either of those. The packagers dealing with the water have backed up for a little while, and so all of those pipes are completely full. But we can see the crude oil pipe is still moving, because as soon as I turned on the factory, all 16 of those refineries sucked up 50 of the oil out of the pipes. And now that they're finally shut off, the oil extractor is able to replace all of that. So I want the oil pipe to completely back up again. Terrific. I made the right choice. 22.2, that's 0.2 meters more than I would have been able to get out of the Mark 1. Wow, usually it has to shut on and off a few times, but maybe having the pump helps. I don't know. Or maybe it's the fact that one half of my factory isn't 2 meters higher than the other half. That might have something to do with it. The beauty of laying out a factory like this is it makes it really easy to do what I just did. I can just let everything back up because this top floor didn't start with any product. So it's a nice infinite loop, but you have to get it started. When I was making the heavy oil residue, that created the polymer resin, and these factories have created just enough. We'll just take all of it, put one stack back. Now I've got a whole bunch of stacks of 50. Be a little bit easier to just run on top of them. So now I can go to every blue refinery because they're the one making plastic. And in case you didn't know, because it took me way too long to realize this, anything that shows up in relevant items, not the all items, it has to be the relevant items. These, you can actually use hotkeys to select any one of these. So I'll put my mouse over here, but if I select one, it's going to throw a stack of 50 into there. And there we go. There we go. The 400s are going to bounce around quite a bit, it seems. The 100, thankfully, should stay between the 99 and 101, I think. And we've got 400, well, probably 390, whoa, wow, all the way down to 392. The throughput graphs on the 400s are definitely all over the place. Oh, but that's beautiful. We've already got 2,500 plastic. 2,700 rubber. Things are looking good. And just to take a quick look at the power. So it wasn't the 14,000 that I thought it was, but it's a solid 10. Thankfully, I've still got a good amount of wiggle room. That is going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for being here. The first plastic and rubber factory is online. If I used the default recipes, I would have only gotten 200 plastic or rubber out of this 300 crude oil. Using a combination of the heavy oil residue, diluted packaged fuel, and the recycled plastic and rubber alternate recipes, I'm able to turn that same 300 crude oil into 400 plastic and 500 rubber, for a total of 900. This gives me a 1 crude oil to 3 parts ratio instead of the default 3 to 2. Both plastic and rubber are going to be used in a good amount going forward. At the moment, this may seem like a huge waste of power to be making this much, and you very well might be right. But I'm pretty confident this won't be the last of these factories I need. Not to mention, the next major space elevator part needs a healthy amount of rubber. Now that I'm looking at what I need to make it, looks like it requires a good amount of a number of things. More than what I have available here in the Grassy Fields. Sounds like it's time to expand some more. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.